Welcome to English Audio Club. Today's story is a heartfelt tale about love, class, sacrifice, and the power of choosing your own path. It's not just a story, it's an emotional journey that will touch your heart and leave you thinking long after it ends. If you enjoy real-life inspired emotional stories in English, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin. Once upon a time, in a quiet town in rural Vermont, there lived a kind and beautiful young woman named Samantha. She was 20 years old, with bright blue eyes and long golden hair. Samantha's family didn't have much. They lived in a modest wooden house at the edge of town, but they shared deep love and laughter every day. Samantha had a passion for reading. Books were her escape, her window into worlds she could only dream of. She often imagined a life beyond the hills that filled with opportunity and love. One morning, Samantha walked into the town's weekly farmers' market. As she browsed the fresh produce and homemade goods, she met a young man named Ethan. He was tall, well-dressed, with dark hair and a warm smile. There was something sincere in his eyes. Ethan was from a wealthy family in Heartfelt. His parents owned a large estate, several businesses, and were well known in the community. Despite their different backgrounds, Samantha and Ethan felt an instant connection. They became close friends. They talked about everything, dreams, fears, hopes, and laughed like they had known each other for years. They took long walks through the fields, strolled along the river, and shared moments that felt timeless. One evening, while watching the sunset by Willow Creek, Ethan turned to her and said, "Samantha, I love you. Will you marry me?" Samantha was overwhelmed with happiness. "Yes, Ethan," she said, smiling through joyful tears. "I love you too." They held each other close and dreaming of a beautiful future together. But life had other plans. When Ethan told his parents about Samantha, they were not pleased. His mother said firmly, "You can't marry that girl. She's not from our world." His father added, "You need someone with status, someone who fits our family." Ethan was heartbroken. He loved Samantha with all his heart and couldn't imagine life without her. He tried to reason with his parents. "She's kind, genuine, and smart. Money shouldn't matter." But his parents wouldn't budge. His father warned to Ethan that if you marry her, we won't support you. You'll be on your own. Samantha understood what was happening, and it broke her heart. She loved Ethan deeply, but she didn't want to be the reason his life became harder. One quiet evening, she said to him, "Maybe we shouldn't get married, Ethan. I don't want to create problems for you." But Ethan shook his head and held her hand firmly. "No, Samantha. I love you, and we'll find a way together." Days passed. Ethan pleaded with his parents, again and again. But they remained firm. Their hearts were cold, and their minds were closed. Samantha's family had started to worry too. Her mother, seeing her daughter in pain, gently said, "Sweetheart, we love you and only want you to be happy. But maybe, it's time to let him go." Samantha cried for many nights. She was torn. Her love for Ethan was real and deep, but so was her desire to protect him. One morning, with tears in her eyes, she walked to Ethan's house. He met her outside, his face tired from sleepless nights. She looked at him and softly said, "Ethan, I love you more than words can say. But maybe it's best if we don't get married. Your parents will never accept me. I don't want to be the reason your life becomes a battle." Ethan was shattered. He looked at her for a long moment before replying, "Samantha, I can't imagine my life without you. But if this is what you believe is right, I'll respect it. Just know, I'll always love you." They hugged tightly, both in tears, knowing deep down that their love was real, but the world had built walls they couldn't climb. Though their hearts ached, they agreed to stay friends. They promised to always support one another, no matter what. But they both knew, something inside them had broken. Samantha returned to her family and tried to carry on with her life. She helped at home, read her books, and smiled when she could, but a part of her heart stayed with Ethan. Samantha devoted herself to her family. She worked tirelessly, helping her parents and younger siblings. Ethan, too, continued on his path. He worked with his family, managed their land, and grew more responsible with each passing year. But no matter how busy life became, he never stopped thinking about her. And she, though she smiled for others, she carried his memory deep in her heart. Years passed. Their lives moved forward, but their feelings remained. They both understood something painful and true. Sometimes, love is not enough, not in the face of the world's resistance. Still, they never let go of the quiet bond that lived in their hearts. Samantha had become a beloved figure in Elmsworth, their tiny rural village. She helped her neighbors, cared for children, and treated everyone with kindness. People said, "That girl has a heart of gold." Meanwhile, Ethan was respected in Glenford, the neighboring town. He helped his father run their estate, managed workers fairly, and gave to those in need. Everyone admired his sense of justice and humility. Then, one winter evening, tragedy struck. Samantha's father fell gravely ill. His breathing grew shallow, and he couldn't rise from bed. Samantha barely slept. She sat by his side, fed him broth, changed his sheets, and prayed. Tears slipped down her face when no one was looking. Word of his illness spread beyond the village. When Ethan heard, he didn't hesitate. He rode to Elmsworth the very next morning and knocked on their old wooden door. Samantha opened it and stood in quiet surprise. Ethan looked into her tired eyes and said softly, "I heard about your father. I'm so sorry, Sam. Can I help in any way?" Samantha's eyes filled with tears, not just from exhaustion, but from the comfort of seeing him again. "Thank you, Ethan," she said. "Your support, it means a lot." Ethan returned later that day with medicine, fresh bread, and herbs. He visited regularly, bringing supplies and sitting with Samantha's father, reading to him, or simply keeping him company. Over the weeks, her father slowly began to recover. His color returned, and he managed to sit up and smile again. One evening, as they stood on the porch watching the sunset, Samantha turned to Ethan. "You've done so much for us. You have a big heart. Thank you for everything." Ethan smiled gently. "Sam, I told you once, I'll always be here for you. That hasn't changed." Ethan smiled and said gently, "Samantha, I will always be here for you. The two of them began to spend more time together again. They talked for hours, about their dreams, their fears, the future they once imagined. Their bond was still strong. They knew their love hadn't faded, but they also knew the truth hadn't changed. Ethan's parents would never accept their relationship. So they made a quiet decision, one that broke both their hearts. They would remain friends. And they would support each other from a distance. One morning, as golden light filtered through the village trees, Ethan came to say goodbye. He had to leave for Ravenport, the distant city where a new job awaited him. "I'll be gone for a while," he told her. "But I'll write to you." Samantha's eyes glistened, but she smiled bravely. "I'll miss you, Ethan. Please take care of yourself." Ethan pulled her into a warm hug. "I'll miss you too, Sam. I promise, I'll come back." And with that, he left. In Ravenport, Ethan threw himself into his work. He learned new skills, managed responsibilities, and slowly built a life of his own. But through it all, he never stopped thinking about Samantha. He wrote her letters, long, heartfelt ones. He told her about the city, the challenges he faced, the small victories he celebrated. And Samantha always replied. She told him about Elmsworth, how the fields were blooming, how her little brother had grown taller, how she still walked the path by the river they once wandered together. Through their letters, they stayed close, two hearts writing across distance, still in rhythm with one another. Months turned into years. Ethan became successful. He saved money, helped his family, and earned respect in Ravenport. But none of it changed what lived quietly in his heart. He still loved her. And back in Elmsworth, Samantha held onto those letters like treasures. She missed him dearly, but reading his words always brought her peace. She was proud of him, proud of the man he had become. Then, one spring morning, without warning, Ethan returned. He stood before her small cottage, and knocked gently on the wooden door. Samantha opened it, stunned. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Ethan, you're back," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "I told you I would come back." Ethan smiled and said warmly, "Yes, Samantha. I missed you." They sat together, talking for hours. Ethan shared stories of his life in Ravenport, the bustling city, the challenges he overcame, the lessons he'd learned. Samantha told him about Elmsworth, the quiet rhythms of the village, and the small joys that kept her going. They laughed. They remembered. They were home, in each other's company. Then Ethan looked into her eyes and said the words that had waited years to be spoken. "Samantha, I still love you. I never stopped. I want to be with you." Her heart leapt. She whispered, "I love you too, Ethan, but what about your parents?" Ethan took her hand gently. "I've saved enough. I can build a life for us, without their approval. I don't need their permission to be happy anymore." Samantha felt a wave of emotion rise within her. "Ethan, I'm so proud of you. But I never wanted to be the cause of pain between you and your family." He smiled and replied, "You're not the cause. You're my peace. My joy. You are my home." They embraced, knowing the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But they also knew this. They were finally ready together. Soon, Samantha and Ethan were married in a small, heartfelt ceremony under the old oak tree near the river. Their closest friends and Samantha's family stood with them, celebrating a love that had endured every test. Ethan's parents didn't attend. They still disapproved. But Samantha and Ethan didn't let that cast a shadow over their happiness. They moved to Ravenport, where they began a new chapter together. They worked hard, supported each other through every storm, and built a life filled with warmth, effort, and hope. They faced many struggles. But love gave them strength. And as long as they had each other, they believed they could overcome anything. Years passed. Samantha and Ethan built a happy home. They had children and raised them with the values they held close. Kindness, honesty, love that does not judge. They never forgot how far they had come. And they never let go of the lessons their journey had taught them. As they grew old together, they often sat side by side, watching the sunset from their little garden. Hand in hand, they would smile and reflect. They were proud. They were grateful. They knew their love had not only survived, it had shaped them into better people. And so, Samantha and Ethan lived the rest of their lives in quiet joy, surrounded by the family and peace they had once only dreamed of. Because they had learned something powerful. True love never dies. It endures. It grows. And in the end, it gives life its deepest meaning.